Salespeople who get it and do something different are starting to have success. And it's also fun. It's fun to learn something different and to mature your skills. And this social selling thing doesn't replace what you've done. It complements. It's another tool in your kit bag. That's one of the barriers, I think, is the name of it gives people the impression that forget what you've done. You need to sell out online. Oh, our product wouldn't sell online. That's not what it is, right? But by terminology, it misleads people into the wrong behaviors.
Hey y'all, welcome to Selling with Social, the podcast that helps marketers increase marketing qualified leads, sales reps to shatter sales results, and sales leaders to grow as leaders. Each show, we interview sales, marketing, and social media practitioners, leaders, and influencers to help you connect, close more deals, build stronger relationships with clients, and improve your sales productivity. I'm Mario Martinez Jr. You're now listening to Selling with Social. Ian Moyse, I am excited to have you on today's show, Selling with Social. This is a great opportunity and privilege, actually, for a lot of our listeners to really hear the practitioner side of the house and leader side of the house of someone who's adopted and leveraged social selling. So I couldn't be more excited. And the one thing I will tell you that makes me most excited is I don't think I've had anybody on the show who's been on more lists, more lists of like fantabulism than you, Ian. You have just Analytica, Rise Market Insights, Clout Lists. It goes on and on and on. My goodness. Like, do you have time to sleep, my friend?
Hi, Mario. Well, interesting, those things. And people sometimes ask me about those. And they're accidental. Firstly, a lot of them, I didn't know I was on them until someone tweeted it and shared it in. And it was like, this is great. What's this about? And people say, well, what's the benefit? Who cares? It's interesting, the opportunities such as speaking with yourself, blog invites I get, invites to present. I've always said you don't know where an opportunity is going to come from. One thing begets another, and I've learned that one from social, if nothing else, over the past few years.
Yeah.
You put yourself out there. You don't necessarily know exactly where it's going to lead. You can't predict, I want to get to ABC. This is what I do to get there. I've had so many opportunities come up, meeting people off TV over here, BBC News presenters, done joint presentations with people, a whole mix of stuff. But I couldn't have predicted it. There was no direct path to it or logical path. It's accidental, positive things happening. And a lot of those help it, right? But it's the world we live in now with digital, I guess.
Yeah, well, congratulations. We'll definitely put some of these amazing lists that you're on in our show notes. I'm excited. So do me a favor. Tell our audience a little about yourself.
Sure. Been in sales now for over 30 years. It's gone very, very quickly. Originally, I started in computing, doing the programming and all the techie stuff. Then I saw salespeople out there who got all the perks of the cars and the brick phones as they were in those days. But I thought, I can do that. I know what I'm talking about, and it's exciting. And I got into it with pad, the traditional hardwired pad, pen, price book phone, thrown in at the deep end, made lots of mistakes, and learned from the people around me by osmosis. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it the whole ride. And the key thing about sales, I guess, is constantly re-engaging and relearning, as we're going to talk about with this medium. I sit on the board of a number of industry bodies, particularly around the cloud industry, non-exec board of a couple of companies. And often I'm called into companies to help advise them on occasional training pieces around their sales process, their customer journey, and social selling. A lot of people are interested and just want to figure out, what is this and would it work for us?
Well, we're going to answer that question here on this particular show. What is social selling? That's why I brought you in for your expertise. So I'm excited about that. Do me a favor, Ian. One thing, I love asking this question because you never know what you're going to get.
Okay.
One thing nobody would know by looking at your social profiles, any of your social profiles. Give us one thing that nobody would know.
Probably the easiest one to jump out is I've got 2 small children, because I haven't got into this posting the world of photos of your kids online. And I guess particularly because I read up on this stuff, and it's interesting reading on the articles of how your kids, by the time they get to 10, the volume of their life that is going to be online, you won't be able to undo it. and it's not their choice. So we've made a conscious choice to not proactively post that stuff. So that's probably the area that's quite an important one in my life, obviously, that no one would know about by looking at social.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. Well, then you've got 2 kids and you don't want to have their digital storyboard of their entire life documented by the age of 10, which I understand. I mean, that's what I do when selling B2B and social is sporadically I'll drip out pictures of the young ones. I've got 2, but for the most part on Facebook, we have that completely privatized. And I use that as more of my personal engagement.
It's a personal choice, right? So I'm not judging anyone else what they do, but we just made that selection to do it that way.
Yeah, no, very good point. Interesting. All right. Well, very good. So let's get into some meat here.
Sure.
And have some fun with this particular discussion on social, especially coming from the leader side of the house, right? Where you actually not only are a leader practicing it, but you're also executing on it with your sales teams. Yeah. How has selling and or the way the buyer engages with sales changed over the course of just the last few years alone?
Sure. I guess the key one is the buyer dynamic, as we talk about it, has changed in that it's getting increasingly hard to get that first engagement with the customer. And I've had this discussion with a lot of businesses where I've got through to meet them, both large and small, and you've built that rapport. And it's interesting to explore. So, for example, speaking to a company, a couple hundred employees, their technology team, the IT team in the business was under 20 people. And the head of that team indicated and said, you've done well to get here, et cetera, because you showed some value. But we get over 100 calls cold, emails cold, whatever, contact points cold per week to our team. If we were to engage and play the polite game, we'd never get any work done.
Yeah, wow.
That's the thing I think from the seller side, people don't look at it from putting themselves in the customer's shoes of what's really going on. So I often start with talking to people about what's your world like? Do you get calls at home in the evening? Do you get people trying to sell you insurance? Or in the UK, it's been a thing called PPI. They're trying to claim your money back off financial insurance. And everyone jokes and goes, yeah. What do? Well, you immediately try and get off the phone as fast as you can. Or you see the number come up and realize it's an international number or there's signs.
Block number of some sort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you behave like that as an individual consumer. Now think about what your customers are doing. And then I get the gotcha moment where they sort of, I never thought of it that way. So it's not personal, but they have to block everything. They have to filter it out. And particularly if you're trying to do a sales pitch over to them electronically in whatever medium, which I'm sure we'll discuss, of course they're going to block it. So what I've seen change is it's got harder the early part of the pipe. Once you get engaged, all your normal sales skills come into play. But the traditional marketing, the inbound leads, all the tools you use, and the tools have got more sophisticated, of course, but it's just got harder to create and fill that pipe with the quality leads that people want. Not noise, but the quality leads that are going to drive your sales. And interestingly, in Europe, it's going to get harder because there's a new law coming in, a data law that I'm involved as a non-exec on a training company for, GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. That changes even further for European of what you can do with the data you hold on people. So I won't get into it now, but that's got a big impact on marketing of unsubscribed. It's going to be a lot harsher on give the permission you need to be able to cold call or cold mail to someone than it's ever been before. So there's a lot of worry in Europe at the moment around marketing, around how is this going to restrict us even further? So the pipe we're talking about is going to get constrained further. So you need to find new ways to engage with the customer that the customer will engage back in that work. Because you can't go back. One thing I say to everyone, there's no turning the clock back. The world has changed. Technology's changed. Millennials are coming into the business. Zeds will follow them. And they've got a different behavior in terms of the mediums they look at, their attention span, what they expect of interfaces, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're not adapting to that, keep doing the old, you're not going to get the same results. That's clear. We've seen that right now.
I love your answer. And I love how you pointed out at the tail end here, how it has changed and you can't turn the clock back. And I've been in sales for 20 years. And I remember when we started having to enter in our contact information and call back on a green screen using telemagic. Now, this is really dating me.
I unfortunately remember it.
Okay. Yeah. All right. But we went from spreadsheets, right? Everything was on a spreadsheet or a notebook. right? And
Yeah.
little Post-it notes. That was everywhere. And salespeople were like, you mean I got to put my information inside of this tool now? Well, yeah, you do. And it's going to help you because, and so it changed, right? So I use that illustration a lot on times of change. And therefore, as a result, the way we engage must also change as well. And I say there's 4 things. Tell me what you think about this. Today's buyer are digitally enabled. There are 3.64 devices worldwide, connected devices that each person has. They are socially engaged. Just in the U.S. population alone, 78% of the U.S. population in 2016 had a social networking profile. 78%.
Yeah.
And we are mobile attached. I've said this 100 times on this podcast. We take our mobile devices to the bathroom with us.
Yeah.
And we are video hungry. And there's multiple stats that are out there, but there's stats that show 69% of the world's internet traffic by the end of this year will in fact be video centric. So that in my mind are the 4 characteristics of today's buyer. What do you think about that?
I totally agree. And now you compare how the average salesman is trying to engage with those people. If you did the old Venn diagram, where's the overlap with what you said? And I would say the majority are not utilizing those mediums anywhere near as much as they should, if at all.
Yeah.
And the second thing I'd say, which is one of the challenges I think we may come on to talk about, is leadership supporting the change.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've seen leaders who are pushing their people, do more calls. Why aren't you doing more calls today? Why have you got your PC open? Who are old school, which absolutely I get, and I get why, because that always used to work. But they're not accepting that things have changed, and there's a balancing act. You still have to do the hard stuff with the cold call, and I get that. If you can go the short route and pick the phone up and get through, do it. But recognize where that doesn't work. And another stat I'll throw out there, another thing we've seen is, and there's plenty of different variants of this, but it used to take 2.6 calls to get through. Nice stats, never round off, right? What's the 0.6 of a call? And now it's 8 to 9 calls. I think it's more than that.
More,
and particularly if you're trying to go to an enterprise account, and particularly if you're trying to get to a C-level or senior level in any way, God forbid how many it is, because it's not even 10, it's not even 20. And what I've said to people is the more you call, the more the wall goes up. So there's a tipping point where you're less likely to get through, particularly if they start recognizing the number, they've had your voicemails. Do you leave a voicemail or don't you? There's all these debates going on in the industry, and there's no right or wrong, but it is just fundamentally harder than it's ever been before.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
You need to do something different and get with it. And what I've seen in the behaviors of salespeople who get it and do something different are starting to have success. And it's also fun. It's fun to learn something different and to mature your skills. And this social selling thing doesn't replace what you've done. It complements. It's another tool in your kit bag. That's one of the barriers, I think, is the name of it gives people the impression that forget what you've done, you need to sell out online. Oh, our product wouldn't sell online. That's not what it is, right? But by terminology, it misleads people into the wrong behaviors.
Well, that's a perfect segue to one of the questions I had for you, which is, what is social selling? Why don't you define that for us?
I don't think it's one clear one, but I'll tell you what it isn't firstly, and I'll just describe that. It's not really selling on social. It's social engagement.
So I love that. That's exactly
sales engagement, right? But that's not nice buzzy word. So it's called social selling. So how I describe to people what is social selling, and then you dig into the color around it, is it's about finding, connecting, listening, sharing, and engaging. It's a process, a methodology. It isn't a tool. The platforms and the tools in social contribute to it, but it is a mindset. It's a way of going about something in the right approach, and it encompasses all those things I've just mentioned.
But Ian, what you just said, you said finding. What was that again? Find,
connect, listen, share, and engage.
Okay, isn't that the definition of sales?
It is. It is.
So let's diffuse this concept that people are talking about out there in the marketplace. That stop trying to leverage social selling. Just pick up the dang phone.
Yep.
And call someone. Well, wait a minute. If you break down what is phone selling, let's call it phone selling, those 5 words that you just gave is the exact definition of what selling is, period. So this is social, in my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it is just another medium by which you can engage with somebody to move an engagement into a conversation. Yes?
Absolutely. It's utilizing your existing sales skills in a sideline way. The thing I would say is, if you're not good at selling, social's not going to solve that for you. Right. Social selling is not going to solve it, right? Because fundamentally with social selling, you end up coming back around to where you were, being either a phone conversation or a meeting and going back into the sales process that you were in before. I see social selling as really that first part of getting to the table, getting engaged with the client, and then utilize everything you did before anyway. So it's going to help you on the hard part, the bit that everyone complains about. And every sales team I talk to, marketing's not giving me enough of the right leads. And every marketing, they're not doing enough. Everyone's got the same thing. Every business I engage with, their biggest problem, if you ask them, is we don't have enough pipe.
Yeah.
There are exceptions, but the majority don't have enough coverage to sit back and go, this is easy. We know we're next month, next quarter, we're there. We know we're comfortable, we're safe. They're all living hand to mouth.
Yeah.
Each month, each quarter, fighting for where it's coming from, doing shows, doing all the old stuff, which is expensive and it's hard. And all of that stuff, shows, adverts, marketing, all the stuff we do, guess what it's to do? It's to get you to the table, and then sales runs the sales engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. A few weeks ago, I did a podcast with Brian Fanzo. And well, actually, for the listeners, I'll put a link back to Brian Fanzo's podcast show here in this one. But what was interesting is he was talking about how he doesn't understand why there's so much fighting amongst influencers, talking about this thing of, selling versus social selling versus cold calling versus not cold calling. The fact of the matter is that our buyers are going to engage with us in a particular way that's the preferred methodology for them. And he challenged all salespeople, or maybe it was me that challenged, I forget what it was. One of the two of us challenged all salespeople to document how your buyer likes to actually communicate. Case in point, I have a buyer who will only respond to my text messages. Go figure. I book my meetings through text. Now, if I was a sales rep on the floor, my sales leader would freak out. Like, there's no way to measure. They don't have access to my text messaging. They can't see that I'm making those efforts, right? It can't be counted as a little tickler in my productivity matrix. So that is why, when you're talking about social, that is why I think it's so important for sales leaders, and I'd love your opinion on this, for sales leaders to stop measuring the quantitative component of did you do X and Y, but rather, how many conversations did you book, or did you create, or did you have?
I've had that bugbear for years where people, my view is the metrics of number of calls, number of meetings, all that stuff is, when do you want to look at that? You want to look at that when someone's poorly performing and everything looks bad. Now I want to dig into what's going on. But if not, I don't care, because what if, and I always play, what if you find your number one salesperson was doing 3 calls a month and blowing it out the water? That I'd want to know, how are you doing it?
How are you doing? Yeah, good.
Don't do it that way. So it's the correlation between success and what you're doing to get the success that's relevant. And the other thing is, not everyone works the same way. You get take 5 sales reps, all that could be doing really good stuff, but they're taking different approaches. What I care about is, are they getting the successful results, and are we learning from what they're doing to continue to improve and maximize that? Not, here's a textbook way of doing it that's worked historically. Let's just roll that textbook out because that's what I've done before. I've lived in that world in the early days where the metrics were different, the customer was different. They didn't have the internet, wasn't the World Wide Web. They weren't going to look you up. No one asked if you had a website, and you confirm your meeting via fax. Well, you need to move on or be displaced. And there's a lot of salespeople in this world getting displaced now because the economies are changing, companies are shifting because companies are being challenged by their own disruptors, and they're all trying to figure out how to do it. And I interview a lot of salespeople, and I love the one that comes through the door, either that knows some of the new stuff or that's willing to ask questions and show interest and go, oh my God, how do you do that? Not, I know it all and I'm doing it the old way. And you can tell them, right? Sometimes I want somebody who's flexible and agile. If they don't know it, that I can help coach them into it. And it's an exciting thing. You want to learn something new. If you learn new skills, it helps you.
Yeah, no doubt. I'll take the guy or the gal who's got the great Rolodex and a great background in sales, but also is willing to learn new things or try new things or be inquisitive. No, it's a great point. So obviously we know that you believe social selling works. Tell us why you think it works. I mean, let's break this down in a different way. Give us an example you personally have seen how social engagement has driven an opportunity or a sale, or maybe one of yours, maybe it's one of your team.
I can absolutely give you. I can give you several. I'm going to anonymize, as I think Dragnet did. We'll protect you anonymous, or whatever the comment was. So I'll give you a couple of examples. One is getting into a global company at CIO level through social. Didn't know the individual before. A lot of it was the find and the listen was looking them up on every social platform. And more senior people are not just going to be on social platforms. They're going to be on commentary and articles. They're going to be interviewed by magazines interested in their strategy and all this sort of thing. So doing the research, and I call it, with my teams, I call it doing the Sherlock. You've got to be like Sherlock. You've got to spot the clues are there, but you've got to spot them when someone else didn't. So finding those things, finding the nuggets of information where one thing links you to another, and putting a story together. So when you approach them, you come across more educated and engaged with them than anyone else they've seen. It took me a lot of research, right? And that's where, if you look at a sales rep, and I did this one myself, but if you look at a sales rep doing that, I get it. The sales leader looks at them and goes, what are you doing on the internet? You're toying around playing. Well, I haven't seen you make a call today. But that effort put into doing that research and then constructing very precisely the message. And you go over it again and again, because it's not a sales pitch. What you're looking at is, have I understood their agenda and their challenges, and can I align something to it that gives them a reference point to want to talk to me, that gives them value, that they want to have that conversation. And it doesn't work every time. You do this with 10 CIOs and you get one bite. It's one bite you wouldn't have got otherwise. So my view is, you have to put a lot of effort in, and it isn't a guaranteed win. But by doing that, we got a meeting, and the first thing that I remember, that we're going into the room, and the first thing the guy said was, "You've done well to get here, because I never meet anyone." Because he's a CIO of a global company. I'll give you another example. A brand name in global brand name market. I engaged with an IT director there. The business I was with hadn't managed to get any engagement with them at any level for 2 years. I saw that as a challenge. So I reached out and looked at their profiles and spotted. I sit on the board of a children's charity, or have done for a couple of years in the UK, and I spotted that individual was interested in voluntary positions on charities, and then their interests were children, animals, etc., etc. So I reached out to them, totally cold on LinkedIn, with an email. I happened to be browsing and note, because I was looking to get engagement with your business, and then I switched straight to, I noticed you've got that on there. I do this with this. I wonder if you'd be interested, because I could make an introduction. I got a response within a couple of hours. This was on a Wednesday. How about a call Friday, 3:00?
Wow.
Doesn't always happen this way, but I'm giving the buttes that happen, the bluebirds that you do get by trying. We had the call, and I had the call everything about what I promised it would be about. At the end, once I felt I'd earned the rapport, I cheekily changed it into, while I've got you, before you go, and he was rounding the call off, before you go, can I just ask you one question, if you don't mind, with a bit of a chuckle? Okay, go on. And I asked, how do I get engagement with you on your cloud stuff and what you're doing? Because to not ask, I'd be naive.
You'll never get it. Yeah.
And he said, do you know what? Fair question. Well, we've got a new CIO coming in. Here's her name, blah, blah, blah. So we agreed we'd speak in a couple of months, because he needed to get strategy from her. But what I started doing then was thinking, well, I want to get engaged with her. So I did the research on her, found out who she was, did the research, started following her on Twitter, looked at what she posted, and occasionally there was something relevant to subjects I could add authenticity to, where I retweeted or liked her post. To the point I felt comfortable, there's one I can comment on. And over about 3 or 4 months, so it takes time, right?
Yeah.
But this is a global brand name. She then, I noticed a trigger event, I call them. She followed me. She liked some of my tweets, so she's noticing what I'm posting.
Yeah.
So therefore, you get the content piece. They're actually seeing it. And then I posted something, included her in with a few other female leaders in the industry, with an article around female empowering women in technology. And one of the others commented back. She joined in that conversation, and I could. So we ended up in conversation. So one of the big things I say about social is it's not immediate. You don't get immediacy. So if this is to fix your pipe for next week, it's not what it's about. This can take time. But if you start it now, you're going to pay the dividends. It's something you do in parallel with everything else you do, because you're doing your other stuff now anyway.
Yeah.
But what about 3 months, 6 months' time? Wouldn't it be great to have a ton more opportunities and engagement with people you wouldn't have had otherwise, because you parallel your current activity with using social selling techniques?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you in terms of it's definitely the long tail strategy for the most part. But I will tell you that there are definite examples of direct, immediate impact onto the pipeline, namely the launch of my personal company, right? M3 Junior Growth Strategies. I published that article about my son, Dad, you said LinkedIn would make you money. For those I'll put a link in the show notes to that. And 3.5 weeks later, I had 2 signed statement of works from 2 Fortune 100s because they saw that I was available. Right?
I don't negate it. But what I always say to people is don't assume that's going to happen, because
absolutely,
that's your assumption. You get demotivated very quickly and you move away from doing it. This is something you've got to get into your daily, I say it needs to be in your muscle memory. It needs to be part of your daily routine, that you're not constantly thinking, how do I do this? What do I do? It just becomes habitual and second nature, that you just do it and it's quick.
Yeah. And a good example of that, to your point, is I had a client who we taught social selling training, and one of the reps reached out to me recently and said, hey, I did everything you told me to do, 1 hour a day, 3 weeks straight, had no results. I stopped doing it because social selling doesn't work. And, I actually haven't even had a chance to respond back to the individual, but I just thought, no, you really got it wrong. That's like saying, hey, I was making phone calls for the last 3 weeks, 1 hour a day, to all my prospects, and nobody responded. Sales doesn't work. I'm gonna quit.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't do that.
And there's other examples, as you say, where people get quick response, and I've had those. So unfortunately, that happens, and that's, I think, where sales leadership uses it to justify why we're not doing it, because
they want something right now.
Response. Yeah, exactly. And I get that. But if you're not getting it right now with anything else, why wouldn't you give something? And there's plenty of examples out there in the industry. This works. It works, but it doesn't work in isolation. It doesn't work overnight, and it doesn't replace what you're currently doing.
Yeah, I know. And funny that you say that, because I just had a conversation with a very well-known technology-based organization, and we were talking about the concept of launching a social program. And I asked the leader this question. I said, are you able to track what percentage of your calls actually result in appointments? He says, yeah, actually, we do track that. I said, great. What is that percentage? He said, 7%. I said, fantastic. That's a really high number. Great. Congratulations. So let me ask you this question. What happened to the other 93%? And he said, well, we haven't, we don't have a way of being able to connect with them, but we're, trying different things to be able to quickly get through the pipeline and bring them into the pipeline very quickly. And I said, well, wait a minute. I think you're going about this wrong. You are happy with a 7% reach by cold calling. Let's go and now think about the long tail strategy here of trying to penetrate the other 93% of the people that you are not reaching every single time. What if it takes you 6 months to be able to reach 20% more of that 97? Are you happy? Well, heck yeah. Okay, well, let's stop thinking about the immediate satisfaction and let's think about the long-term satisfaction and the growth of your pipeline.
And do you know what I've also seen, Mario, that what I've seen happen is, well, that's the job of marketing. It goes back into a marketing nurturing pool. Well, that's great, but that's content just getting pushed out. That's not engagement.
Yeah,
that's one-way push. Where's sales responsibility for that? And the champions out there get it right. What I've seen is the sales champions grab hold of this and run, but they tend to be the 20% of your sales force that do 80% of your business.
Yeah.
And funny enough, they're the ones taking it to the next stage. Well, it's the other 80% of your sales reps you want to bring up to the previous level of those individuals, because big difference on your results.
Yeah. For sure. I totally agree with you on that. I think that's some great dialogue, and hopefully the leaders that are listening are getting the idea that, one, this can immediacy happen in your sales pipeline? Sure. But this is a long-term approach in terms of prospecting, and you've got to be able to go where the buyers are. So that's some good dialogue. Ian, for those that are listening, top 3 things that you would say are required for a salesperson to get started with social selling. Give us 3 things that you say are required.
Okay, that's a good one. So firstly, I'd say willingness. You've got to buy into this. If you're not buying into it, you've just given the prime example. You're going to give up. You're going to find the first excuse that it doesn't work and give up. Secondly, I think, is your personal bio. And many people talk about this. I've talked about this many times before, is how do you come across online? How do you look? And there's whole arts to this, but just get the basics right. Look professional, because if you're going to do this social thing, in whatever engagement you have, someone's got to look at your profile, whether it's whichever social mediums you're engaging on. And the number of times I see the drunk photos still, or the wedding photo, or the partying photo, and great, that you're trying to show you're a fun person, right? But that's not the first impression with a customer. If you walked into their office, you wouldn't look like that. Sales, you understand first impression counts. First impression in today's world is often a digital one.
Yeah.
And you can't control when they're going to look at you. When you're going to their office, you can put your shirt on, get polished up, etc. You're controlling the scenario. Digitally, you're not. They might look you up. They might have looked up your company and looked up who their local regional rep is or whatever before you even expect it. You don't have that opportunity to polish it later or polish it just before. And I guess the third one would be getting some training around it. I guess is probably a good one, and getting some mentoring around it. Whether it be reading a book, and I know Tim Hughes well, authored Social Selling. There's another book just come out called Gnome, which is about personal bios. Put some effort into this. It's your career. As we've talked, the biodynamic and selling is changing. Selling is quite a lucrative area to be in. Why wouldn't you invest a little bit back into it? I'm sure you've read other books on closing and presenting and been on courses. This is an area, there's a plethora of information out there. If you're listening to this podcast, that's a good sign. I always worry about the people that aren't listening to it.
Yeah.
Because that's the ones that have typically got the problem because they're not paying any attention. So that'd be the three simple things, I guess. There's no rocket science to it.
I like that. And I think, as you know, my company released a online training program, and it was all on the concept of the buyer's journey and personal branding, right? It's a 2.5-hour course. It's $200. I mean, it's dirt cheap.
It's nothing, right? Absolutely. For the value it will give back. How many deals do you need? How many deals do you need? Do you need 1 or 1,000th of a deal?
Exactly. And it all starts with the branding. I did a podcast back in, I think it was December, and they asked me, like, how did you get to where you're at? And I said, one word: branding. That's it. Branding. Like I was able to brand myself and do it effectively. And when I engage with insightful commentary that people actually are like, wow, I didn't think about that. Okay, fair enough. So I think that's what people need to be thinking about is take your point, what you just said, start out with that branding piece, brand themselves to attract their buyers. Use Tim Hughes' book. We'll put a link into that. Use our course. It's $200. I mean, that material right there alone could help you very easily strike up your next deal. So great advice you gave there. We touched on this, and it was on sales leaders driving social sales adoption. So I think generally speaking, many sales leaders are scared to drive this social sales adoption, primarily because, and I've said this before on our show, most director level and above are age 40 and above.
Yep.
And as a direct result of age 40, and I'll be 40 next month, we grew up on a different way to prospect, different methodology. And so we don't understand this social crap is what I hear all the time. I don't understand. This is for my kids, right? I'm on it because I'm monitoring my kids. So are sales leaders, scared to drive social adoption? And if they are, or if you see that problem, what advice would you give to a sales leader to help overcome those fears?
The way I talk to them firstly is I absolutely appreciate where you're coming from, but who's your buyer? If we go back, your buyer's on email, we're not using email. Really? Think about when email first came in. People were having the same conversation on how much time you're spending on email. Now we all take it for granted, and I would argue that a high percentage of your engagement with a customer during the buying process, unless it's a quick sale where you call them, speak to them, they give you an order, is going to be email communication because it's transient. You don't have to be there both at the same time. It keeps the thing moving. You can share information, video as you described, etc. And yet we're now scared to move to utilize social as a platform. So I sort of get it, right? Because a lot of them don't have a social account. I find that when you go to it. But the easy way is go and look at your customers. If you know who your target universe is, if you really want to do this, get a salesman and go, who are your top 50 target accounts? What's the profile they've got? And let's have a look. Do the people we're trying to get hold of have a LinkedIn account? I bet they do. The majority of industries and people will have at least a LinkedIn account, number one. Then what I look at is, do they have a Twitter account? Because that typically is where people post more content and more conversational. And you'll find some do, some don't. I find that in the technology sector. Some CIOs don't have Twitter accounts. Others are very active on there and sharing. And you can see what they're interested in. What's their passion? What's their opinion? Because the one thing about social, and we've seen this with all the news about Trump, right, is people follow and share things that reinforce their own opinion.
Sure, yeah.
right? So you get these groups and clusters of people together who have all got the same opinion or share interests. So if someone's sharing something on Twitter, they're rarely going to share something they totally disagree with. So you can get an impression of, hey, they're really into and about this particular technology, or they're really into virtualizing or whatever's going on. And then you can look for engagement and commentary with them. So usually I get people like, let's have a look and open their eyes to, actually, I never realized, crikey. So what could you do with this? What this individual here, one of your reps is trying to get hold of, or this business you haven't managed to get engaged with, here's what I would do. And that's what I walk them through is, what I would do is do this, 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 and this. That makes sense. But you wouldn't be doing that today, right? And this is one example account. So imagine across, you've got 10,000 target accounts. What if there was 400 of them you could really do a good job of this for, and you could get into them? Would that make a difference to your outcome? Because you're not doing any of it today. So it's really trying to open their eyes into this. The hard part, I guess, is this has got to be led from the front. Some salespeople will get this and pick it up themselves regardless and run with it. You know, you've got those A-player exceptions. But often in sales teams, you've got young salespeople, often inside salespeople who need to do that research. And you need someone guiding them into, this is a great thing. Let's coach you. Let's bring someone in to train you. Let's point you to the right information and books and materials. And if you haven't got that leadership from the front and that support, it often fails. So one of the things we often talk to with businesses is do a workshop with the leadership. Yeah, to try and open their eyes to this and educate them. You as leaders don't need to get into this if you don't want to do it yourselves, but we do encourage they do, because if you've got someone in the room as one of you as leaders that really understands your industry and your business, you've been passionate about it and you've got a great opinion, and your company would put you in front of any audience and you would give so much value, why can't you take that value on social? Maybe you need some help doing it with the tools, but you could become a thought leader in your area and help your brand of your company, help your salespeople, because what if you get engagement with businesses they want to engage with? Because you're giving that value.
Yeah.
So it's good to have thought leaders on social representing your business who are from the leadership. C-level like to deal with C-level and listen to people who've got a good opinion and good information to give.
Fantastic insights. You know, it makes me think of, man, I think I need to start inviting some more C-level buyers, CIOs, CTOs, even CSOs, and interview them either from a webinar perspective or from a podcast perspective on actually how to penetrate the C-level office. I think that would actually be valuable so that people can actually hear some of these things and put some validity to things that you're saying here. Good. Love what you said. I think I want to move on into talking about the role of marketing.
Sure.
We talk about this component of sales and sales leadership, having to adopt social, leverage social as a tool in their toolkit to connect with their buyers. Mm-hmm. Let's move on to talking about marketing. The role of marketing in helping to drive marketing SQLs via social. How can they help the sales team? Well, what should salespeople expect from marketing?
Firstly, I'll turn that question on its head, that sales shouldn't expect marketing to do this, and the business shouldn't put the whole piece of social in marketing. And I see this again and again where, the social media stuff, that's all marketing. Yeah, well, right, there's the first mistake. That's the first stake in the ground. The second one is you can use this as a good way to get marketing and sales to engage, right? Where marketing tends to engage with sales on social is, we've created some content. Can you all push it out on your social platforms? And that's sort of where it ends. Great, you see, you're pushing stuff out, but that's a one-way push, and that's fine, but that's not really what this is about. So the real engagement should be, in my view, marketing working with sales to understand what content are you seeing discussions about. Get sales engaging and then say, what's happening out there? What are the conversations that are going on? What content do you need? What content would it be useful? Because if I see a conversation and I've got a library of good content, which is relevant and not aged content. It's no good selling them something which is an opinion from 5 years ago. But there's a conversation with someone saying, well, I'm trying to figure out how to do digital transformation. I'm trying to figure out how to do change management. Whatever it be that your company addresses, wouldn't it be great to have something which is the top 10 steps that small businesses have used to become more digital?
Yeah.
And if that's the sort of question, great, I can share that into the conversation. Whether it's be on LinkedIn, Facebook, whichever social platform. Actually, that's great. I'm hearing what you're saying. A lot of people have found this paper really useful. I've shared the link here. So it's not just pushing the stuff out, you're actually putting it into a conversation where there may be a group of other people discussing it, who then may discuss some of your content or give you engagement.
Yeah.
So marketing has a role to play in absolutely producing good and continuously producing good content. It's got to be fresh content and regular that people can use. It doesn't have to be a huge white papers. It might be a couple of pages or simple insights from existing customers, etc.
I would argue that less is more, right? And from the marketing
good quality
side.
is the key. Good quality is the key, not blasting stuff. So that would be one area. The other one is absolutely having social advocates in the business, supporting and mentoring people posting stuff out. What I've often seen is marketing becoming the social police. Only post out what we share with you, number one, and post it out when we give it to you. So I've just given you a job to do. So I've sent you it. You now need to go and do it. If you're going to do this, why not automate it? Yeah. There's some real easy tools to do this. Right? I use tools to do this. So if I want to send stuff out from a blog, for example, you mentioned earlier I'm involved with digital leaderships on the social side. You'll see me retweeting all the stuff that comes from them blogs. I'm not doing it because I've used two simple free tools to say, there's their blog, retweet everything that goes to their blog. Rather than me do it manually, every time they post it, I'm going to go and do it. So why don't I just automate it? And the same if you want to with a Twitter account. If that Twitter content is everything you want to post, or maybe everything you post on that account where the hashtag is security, so everything we post at work on our account where the hashtag is security, I want to repost that because I'm only doing the security products of our business, for example. You can use tools to set rule sets up for this. So those tweets automatically get retweeted, as opposed to every sales rep, you've just taken up 2 minutes at a time, 5 times a day.
Yeah.
Help them automate it, show them the tools that you can use. A couple of tools there I'll mention. dlvr.it, a nice name that rolls off the tongue, but that will repost blogs for you. And you can set beautiful rules around it. Only post one a day from this blog, or post it only if it includes this hashtag, but add this one. It's a really slick engine. It isn't just reshare the blog. It's how do you want to make it look and do all this stuff automatically for me. And the other one is one called roundteam.co. And that one will let you also retweet an account.
Is that round? R-O-U-N-D?
That's it, roundteam.co. And in that tool, you can say, here's an account, repost everything that comes from this account on my Twitter account, but with these rules. So those rules might be, but no more than 5 a day. But not if it includes, and there's tick boxes for profanity and all this stuff. So you can say if it's profanity or if it's got an image or if it's got this. Don't include this, but do include this and add this tag and do this with it. It's quite complex rule set you can build if you wish. Why not use things like this? And that's 2 examples. And therefore, the effort of doing that heavy lifting is taken away. The bit, my view, is sales should be doing is the engaging, the personal stuff. The autonomous stuff that you can automate, do it. The end user sees exactly the same result as if I've reposted it. So if people look at mine, they often ask me, you said it, how do you find time?
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, I've spent time automating the rule sets on a lot of stuff. So it only shares stuff that I would have shared anyway, but it's not me manually doing it. It's behaving like I would behave.
Fantastic piece of advice as it relates to how marketing can be engaged and help the sales organization in putting together these tools, and how social media managers could serve as a valuable resource to the sales organization in putting together some of these tools. The other ones that I knew of was Social Cloud Suite, which does the same thing as Deliver It. But these are great tools, and we'll put that into the show notes as well. Ian, you've given some extremely valuable insights into why we should leverage social, how we can leverage social, what leaders should do both on the marketing and the sales side to be able to integrate social into our sales culture. If there was one piece of advice, and we've only got a few minutes here, but if there's one piece of advice that you could give sales leaders or sales reps or both to grow their sales revenue in 2017, what would it be?
I think that could be an easy one. Start embracing social selling now. Because if you think, I'll get around to it in 4 or 5 months, even if you do stick to that promise to yourself, it's going to be too late. Because as we've said, this isn't immediacy. So I'm getting benefit from this now, speaking to people like yourself and getting opportunities layered based on things I did way back.
Yeah.
Not because I did something 2 days ago. So that would be the biggest thing, because procrastination is going to be your biggest challenge with this. And I see it again and again. I'm too busy trying to hit my target. You get into a vicious loop in selling. And unless you start doing this now, you'll be doing, I can assure you'll be doing the same thing with the same performance in 6-7 months and find another excuse to put it off again because you're not performing.
I love it. Great piece of advice. Ian, if someone wants to connect with you, reach out to you, ask you any questions, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Sure. I'll give two web links, www.ianmoyse.co.uk and the same again, ianmoyse.cloud. I don't know why I say www anymore. You don't even need it, right? But habit. So yeah, ianmoyse.co.uk or ianmoyse.cloud will take you to my Twitter and my LinkedIn accounts. Just shielded them. Again, going that little bit extra to make it friendly and external, and your personal bio costs nothing to have a domain name, but it just makes you look more professional to any engagement you have. So little tips, things that people can think of.
And we'll put both of those websites into the show notes for the listeners, but just for the audible version, it's IANMOYSE.com, correct?
That is absolutely correct. Thank you.
Yeah, love it. Well, Ian, it's been fantastic having you on the show. I always close out with a question or two. We've got about one more minute, so we've got a quick answer here. Okay. All-time favorite movie?
Just favorite movie?
Just favorite movie. Or you could go with an inspirational movie. You can go with that.
If it's inspirational one, I'll say Rocky, and I'll give you the reason in 10 seconds. Rocky, because not just the story of it, but when I found out Sylvester Stallone wrote it and was offered the money to get out of there and hand it over, and he wouldn't sell it without taking the leading role, that is what created his whole career, because he stuck his guns and went for the win and his beliefs. So whether you like him or not, you've got to admire he wrote that thing from scratch as a nobody and then stuck with it. So
I love that movie. That's a fantastic pick. I love that. I haven't had that one on the show yet, so I'm glad. And the other one I would ask you is who or what inspires you?
I'll say what, I guess, is tenacity. People who have failed and failed again. The Dyson story, which is the Hoover vacuum cleaner type one, I guess, is one that everyone uses, where he did 300 or 400 of the things, or I forget the exact number, but hundreds and hundreds of the things before there was ever one that you could sell, because it just took that. How many people would have given up at the second hurdle, the third, and that's selling, right?
Yeah.
How many people give up? Well, that's what we've been talking about. So I think tenacity for me is just keep fighting at it, finding a different way. If it fails, getting up again.
The great Ian Moyse has spoken. I love it. You are awesome, my friend. Thank you so much for joining the Selling with Social podcast. For those that are listening, stay tuned right now for this next message. Thanks for listening to the Selling with Social podcast. I'm super pumped that you are our guest today. Here's what I want you to do right now. Go to jr.com/podcast and support our podcast, please, by distributing it out anywhere you can get it to on social. And don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes. You'll find all the instructions there on the site on how to subscribe to the Selling with Social podcast. Until the next show, keep on rocking. Mario Martinez Jr. out.